Hey Harry, how you doing?
What's up, David? Good. Doing good.
Good, good. Today's guest is Harry O'Reilly. I've known Harry since 2002 or 3, I think. And Harry has been acting, at least according to IMDb, since like 1987. You have a litany of films, and I pulled it up. You've been in Hamburger Hill as Duffy. Was that the M60 you were on in that film?
I was the crazy M60 gunner. Yeah.
Yep. And then you've been on stuff like The Equalizer, Ben Stiller Show. Oh my God, Billy Bathgate, Reality Bites, where you play the slightly aloof stepfather, which was hysterical with the ashtray and the red glasses. Um, Cable Guy, I remember that. Yep, yep, yep. What are we talking about? Then you had the Cable Guy, where you played the boss with the hair plugs.
Yes.
I remember seeing that in the theater, and then when you mentioned in class that you were that guy, I was like, "Holy shit!" I remember that.
And I
Even in
played the guy
Oz,
with cards. Yeah, Oz. Yeah.
Oz, Sex in the City,
I also had
Family.
hair in Sex in the City. Just
Oh, you did? You brought it back. The Job, I remember that. The Practice, your own film, Crooked Lines, that you had a lot of people in, including Jim Brewer, I think Colin Quinn, right? And multitude of other folks. The Jury, The Interpreter with Nicole Kidman, Black Donnelly's, which was short lived, but I remember that.
good show.
Been on, yeah. Law and Order, you've been on a couple of times. Tower Heist. I mean, it's just keep going and going and going. So obviously, I mean, for people who are watching who don't know, I started taking classes with Harry in 2004 after we had met at a couple of like meet and greets at various things in New York. And I have to say, you'd created the Actors Alliance, and it was, as I mentioned to you a couple of weeks ago when we met, it reminded me a lot of the stories I used to hear from an uncle of mine who acted about what the actor studio was back in the day, where you would just go to class and you were excited. You were supportive, you were excited. Um, it was fun. It was one of the rare times I had classes I looked forward to, but I didn't, and I had classes that I felt a community at. But Actors Alliance was really, you did a great job of just assembling a group of people, a lot of which I still talk to today. And you looked forward to seeing these people every week. And if you had like a really bad week, um, it was nice to know. And, to let people know what a good guy you were. I had lost my job. You let me take classes for free, I think, for like 3 months. So, which I always remembered. So,
It's
um,
yeah.
yeah. So I'm curious. I want to know when you have as many credits as you do, and you've met so many people, you're free to talk about some of them or not. It's your choice. What got you into acting? What made you want to start doing this?
Um, I always wanted to do it as a kid. Um, I got the lead in Oliver Twist in fifth grade.
Hmm.
Please have some more. And um, and I loved it. And I just had a great love for it. And then I got the lead in the school play in sixth grade. But then, you get a little older, and I grew up in Brooklyn. So at least for me, it became a thing. You don't walk around saying you want to be an actor growing up in Brooklyn. I just didn't. But I played basketball, football, baseball. It wasn't until I was in my late teens where I told a relative of mine who was an actress that I wanted to get into acting. And she had a little class up in Monroe, New York, upstate. And I would go up on Monday nights, take the bus up, and we did a lot of improvisation, and I loved it. And she told me, "You have to do this. You're talented." It was another 2 years. I left school. I was buffing floors at Dayton Towers in Rockaway Beach. And I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I was drinking a lot. I developed a nice little drinking problem, but still playing sports. And I got invited to play for the Brooklyn Mariners. They were a semi-pro football team. And we had a great team. We were nationally ranked, and we were playing a playoff game in Montclair State University against the Jersey Rams. And I had a great game. I had like 13 tackles. And some coach came up to me after the game. I was 20. And he said, "Hey, I heard you're not going to school. Do you ever think about going back to school?" And I said, "Yeah, I think about it all the time." He said, "Why don't you come play for me?" And I told my dad and my coach and all my friends, and they were like, "Harry, go, just go, get the fuck out of the neighborhood." Because I was a barroom brawling psychopath too. We could skip over that part, but you know, about 40 to 50 barroom fights that
Oh my God.
I was undefeated. And I was boxing also at the time. And I had a guy who was training me, who wanted me to go pro. And then, you know, my dad didn't want me going pro. And I told the guy I'm not going pro, and like never spoke to me again.
Wow.
And so all my friends were like, you know, "Harry, just go, get the fuck out of the neighborhood. This will be great for you."
Yeah.
So I went to Central Connecticut State University and to play football. And it was the third day. And I was sitting in the back of the administration building where they had the theater. Beautiful building, beautiful campus. And I watched them, they were rehearsing the school play. And I just lost it. I just started bawling. All wanting to do this since I was a little kid, it all just came out. And I walked across campus. I quit the football team. I walked back across campus. I knocked on Dr. Finizio's door and I said, "I want to be a theater major. What do I do?" And he said, "Well, who are you?" And I said, "Well, I'm Harry." He goes, "You know, this is a big commitment." I said, "I just gave up a scholarship. I'm serious." And
Yeah.
he said,
Right.
"All right, we'll see." And we went over everything. He signed me up. I called my dad that night. I thought he was going to be pissed at me. And my mom and dad were both like, "This is the best news we've heard in a long time." And from that, you know me, Dave, you know, I had no plan B. Like, that was it. So once I got into acting in school, it filled me up like nothing ever did, ever.
Yeah.
You know. And then I went home that summer, my first summer. No, a year and a half. I was there for a year and a half. And my second summer, the head of the department said, "Harry, you get yourself in a good class this summer. You know, this doesn't come easy for you." So I was like, "Okay, doc," you know. Well, 2 weeks later, he called me up at my dad's house upstate. And he said, "Are you in a class yet?" I said, No, I'm going tomorrow morning. I got to go to the Strasberg Institute. That's the only thing I knew about. So the next morning, I go down to the Strasberg Institute and I see about 30 people in chairs in a line. And I go into the office and I say, the woman who worked, Isa Freeling, she's still a friend.
Okay.
I said, "Hey, is there any acting classes I could sign up for?" And she said, "Oh, well, Geraldine Page is auditioning for her class. Why don't you audition for her class?" I didn't know who Geraldine Page was. And there was this long line, and there was some really cute girl who was like third in line.
Okay.
And I was good with the cute girls back in the day. And I went up and I said, "Hey, I gotta get going. Is there any way you could go before?" She goes, "Yeah, you can go ahead." So I went in third, and I had my Long Day's Journey into Night monologue in my back pocket. And I did it for her. And she says, "Thank you. That was really, really good work. Nice to meet you." And I left. And 2 days later, I got a phone call that I got in Geraldine's class. Now, little did I know, she auditioned about 1,200 people.
Holy crap.
Took like 4.
Wow.
And I started her class, and it was just a different feeling. I just felt like you were saying, just I couldn't sleep the night before class. I couldn't
Hmm.
wait to get there. And um, she said to me, you need to audition for the studio, for the actor's studio. And I did, and I made it to the finals in my first year, like the final. And one of the judges at the studio saw my audition. We did Bounties for Cardiff. The O'Neill, remember the O'Neill one acts from great series of one acts. Bounties for Cardiff was one of them. The Sea Plays, I think it's called. But a judge gave my number to casting director, who called me in for Hamburger Hill.
Oh, wow. I was going to ask you how you got Hamburger Hill.
I didn't even have an agent. Yeah.
Wow.
So
Wow.
I went in, I did my Long Day's Journey monologue. That
Hmm.
monologue got me 3 films. And and 8 months out of school, I was in the Philippines. Yeah. So it kind of happened in a whirlwind those first couple of years. But
So the image, it broke up a little bit. You were in the Philippines. I was going to ask you where it's shot. You were in the Philippines for how long?
3.5 months.
Wow.
We
It's a
shot it.
long time.
Yeah. So it was Don Cheadle's first film,
Yep.
Lee Vance's first film, Steven Weber,
Hmm.
Dylan McDermott, Anthony, Tim Quill, Michael Patrick Bowman.
Hmm.
Like, it was everyone's first film. It was incredible.
I watched it years ago when I was taking class with you, and then I went back and I rewatched it because I knew we were going to be chatting. And I was sitting there, I was going, holy shit. I mean, it's like, I briefly, Michael Boatman, I remember he was on Spin City.
That's right.
And I remember a guy I knew was standing in for Michael J. Fox's stand-in. So he snuck me on the set, so I was able to see the episode that Woody Harrelson was on. So that was cool. But Michael Boatman, I don't even think I met him, but I just remember watching him and thinking how professional he was. And Don Cheadle obviously is blown up, and Dylan McDermott, Steven Weber, I've always thought is like
A genius.
ridiculously talented. I always wanted to see him play the Joker. If I was a director and I was able to make a Batman movie, it was like I wanted Steven Weber as the Joker, without a doubt. I remember he did The Shining. Remember they did a remake of The Shining on TV,
You say,
and I
if
was like,
you
damn,
seen him
this is
acting, you would just offer him the Joker. Yeah.
yeah. I was like, this is better than freaking Nicholson. I mean, he just was so freaking psychotic and wild, and oh my god. But that was such a Hamburger Hill is like all those Vietnam movies are depressing, but Hamburger Hill I found to be exceptionally bleak and depressing because it's all about Hamburger Hill, which is people getting minced up on a mountain, on a hill.
It was the single bloodiest battle in the Vietnam War.
Yeah.
I think 365 guys died in
Mm.
8 days.
Wow.
So they abandoned the hill 2 days later. No
So
tax
pointless.
value whatsoever.
Yeah.
And over the years, I've become friends with a lot of vets because of Hamburger Hill.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a group in Staten Island that I go see every couple of months, and we hang out. And
That's cool.
the VFW, yeah, it's a lot of
Yeah.
fun.
That's
And
neat.
every vet that I've talked to over the years, they always said Hamburger Hill to them was the most realistic.
Mm-hmm.
Realistic.
Yeah.
Full Metal Jacket's a great movie. What's the other one?
Platoon.
Platoon's a great movie, but
Yeah.
the whole
Yeah.
like soldiers really weren't killing each other. They were killing the enemy.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
what a lot of the guys said. That was all bullshit, and but the experience was a great experience, and to meet that many really good young actors. We're all still friends, all
Mhm.
of us,
That's great.
good friends. Like, we text each other constantly. I was talking to Courtney, I was talking to Steve last week, and Dylan and Cheadle, and we all say hi.
Yeah, geez, Courtney B. Vance. I mean, that's another guy. I mean, it's just It's like every time you see him in something, or he just shows up and does this thing. He has that amazing timbre in his voice, and you're captivated by what he's doing.
He's incredible.
Yeah.
But yeah, after that, so when I got back from Hamburger Hill,
Mm-hmm.
I was like, who's this judge from the studio? I want to go say thank you for giving my number. So I found out it was Sharon Chadden, and someone told me she was teaching a class somewhere, and I went to her class one night with flowers to say thank you. And she said, why do you want to come join the class?
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah,
Mm.
and that's where I met Ben. Ben Stiller was there,
Okay. Wow.
Vincent D'Onofrio, Cecilia Peck, George Russo. Like, we had this really great group, Laura Delano,
Mm-hmm.
Nina Tremblay. And it was like our group back in the day where everyone just loved each other. The level of work, I remember our class, Dave, there were some nights, the level of work that was going on. Do you remember what I used to say? The action was in here tonight.
Yeah, I remember that.
And there were nights in our class with your group where I felt this was it here tonight.
Yeah.
City missed it. And we had that feeling in our class, like,
Yeah.
it was special, and it breaks my heart that back when because you're an old school dude, you always have been. And when I came out of school, if you weren't in a good class,
Mm-hmm.
you weren't really an actor.
Right.
Now you have a lot of young actors like, you're in class? Well,
Right.
you're in class? Yeah. And I've talked to some young actors and I say, are you in a good class somewhere?
Mm-hmm.
They look at me like, I have three heads,
Yeah, they just have a large TikTok following probably, or something crazy.
Yeah, and it's funny that we're talking because I've been teaching for a long time, and it's been slow these last couple of years,
Mm-hmm.
and I've directed a few little films and stuff. But a friend of mine, Bobby Moresco, he has this place called the Actors Gym,
Mm.
and he invited me to join. And I'm going to be doing my first scene in a class Monday night.
Wow.
In a long time, in about 15 years.
So you're going to be teaching, or you're going to be?
Oh, I'm going to be acting.
You're going to be acting. Oh, okay, okay. Wow.
He wrote the movie Crash. He's a screenwriter and a director.
Okay, yeah. I know Crash. Yeah.
Dollar Baby. Him and Paul Backus are writing partners. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
So he called me up out of the blue and he said, hey, man, because I was in his first film. And he said, I got the Actors Gang going here in New York now. I want you to be a part of it.
Cool.
I was like, damn.
Nice.
I'm going to be back in class.
You excited?
I just finished rehearsing with my partner. Yeah, I'm a little nervous. It's a good role. It's fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think that was one of the things I remember having a class. I don't remember what the scene was, but I didn't memorize it. Like, we were supposed to rehearse, we didn't rehearse, whatever the heck was going on. We were going back a while, and I didn't memorize the scene, and I came in and you saw me and you were like, what's up? What's going on? And you said, you look a little whatever. And I just said, yeah, I'll be honest with you. Because you used to say, I can tell if you're lying, you get like, listen, you put your hands on the shoulder. He's like, listen, are you lying? And I remember saying, I didn't memorize, and I didn't meet with the scene partner. And, I'm going to fuck up all the lines. And you remember you saying, who cares? Who fucking cares about the lines? Just what's the character about? Do you know what the character's about? And I said, yeah, I totally know what the character's about. And you're like, well, then just go and do it and have fun and live it, and the words will come. I remember thinking, because that was not what I had. I had another really great teacher, Lawrence Gewirtz, who I worked with for 2 years. But every other teacher I had, it was always like the words. Everything was about the words. So, you would kind of get that beat into your skull. And so it was very liberating to just kind of say like, wow, you know what? I don't have to worry about these words, And then I got up and a lot of the words came to me, which I thought was because I didn't think I knew them, but I did.
Yeah.
So it's a very valuable lesson, but class is always a little nerve wracking in general. Especially if you don't know the people yet in the class.
That's right. Remember this one, Dave. If you feel it, your body will reveal it.
Yeah, I remember that. I didn't remember that until now, but yeah, it comes back. It comes back to you.
Don't play it, say it.
Yeah, yeah,
And yeah, that's what Geraldine drilled into my head. She said it's not about the words.
yeah.
She did it my second class with her. She said, Harry, it's not about the words. She said, I want you to look at me and say I love you.
Mm-hmm.
I want you to feel that you hate me.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked at her and I said, I love you.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, now look at me and say I love you and really feel that you love me.
Yeah.
And I said, I love you. She said, is it about the words?
Yeah.
That's all. There's nothing else to talk about after that, right?
No.
It's not about the words. It's about what's going on beneath the words, right? So
Yeah, the
if someone
subtext.
said to you, get out of here. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
get out of here versus get
Yeah.
out of here.
Mm-hmm.
You wouldn't leave on the first one unless you're, a little crazy, right?
Yeah.
But
So
very big on preparation too, Geraldine. And I was lucky enough to be on a show called Homefront. It was
I was
on,
going to ask you about that next. Yep.
and we won the People's Choice Award. It was a good show. And
Mm-hmm.
Anthony Hopkins was sitting by himself at the table next to us. I don't know, I may have told you the story years
I
ago.
remember this story. I've told people this story, but go ahead.
Sitting there by himself. And John Slattery, Slattery from, I said, fuck, there's Hopkins. He was good friends with my acting teacher. He goes, why? He was sitting right there. This is one for Silence of the Lambs.
Sounds of the Lambs, right?
So I went over and I introduced myself, and he said, oh, how are you? Have a seat. You know how he is. And
Yeah.
and I introduced myself and I told him that Geraldine used to talk about him. And he goes, oh, Jerry, I miss her. I love her so much. And, and I told him that because she was big on relaxation and preparation.
Mm-hmm.
She would read the play 20 times before even thinking about the words.
Right.
And if you get involved in the time, place, setting, circumstances, relationship, and stakes, if you get so personalized before memorized, right? Like you said, you go to the words are there, they're waiting, right? And he said, yeah. He goes, I usually read the script 100 times before I even think about the words. He goes, and I just memorize the whole script because it's a project I'm working on. I want it to be a part of my soul, my being. And I asked him about the fava beans line.
Yeah.
And he said, so how did that come about? He said, what happens is these things occur to you. They float in front of you. He said, it occurred to me that's what was going on. And he said, we did it in rehearsal and I kept it because it occurred to him.
Yeah.
Because he was so invested in the specifics of the circumstances and the life of the piece that these behavioral things, he said, he relaxes to the point where, and he especially did that in, the scenes where he's, But I said, well, great to meet you. We talked to him for about a half hour. And he said, where are you going? Stay. And he got me a soda. I told him I didn't drink. He didn't drink either. I sat with Anthony Hopkins for almost 2 hours.
Oh my God, that's awesome.
And then Slattery came over and then everyone came over. But that's
a great story.
That was pretty cool, yeah.
Yeah. Now, it's funny, when he was doing Meet Joe Black, they were filming that, I think in Jersey at a place called the Armory, which I think was a military, huge hangar. And they built the set in this hangar. My aunt was dating this guy at the time who was in charge of a bunch of stuff. And he said that Like Brad Pitt had a special tunnel he would walk through so that no one could talk to him, so he could stay in wherever he was. But Anthony Hopkins was just walking, walk through the halls. And the final day of shooting, he was going from office to office, opening the door and saying, "Hey, everybody, come, we're having milk and cookies downstairs, and come on down. We want to thank you for your service and your, how nice you are and everything." And they just said, like, no one expected him to be just this. He was like this huge grandfather for everybody, for at their place, So he just, I've never heard anything bad about him. Which is really, it's nice. It's nice when we've all had that experience where you've met somebody and you really don't. Sometimes you're disappointed and sometimes you're not, and it's always nice to hear that he's such a legit guy, and such a genuine person too, which I think is cool.
Yeah, yeah. He sat in on my friend John Ruskin's class out in LA. He teaches in Santa Monica. He has an airplane hangar, and that's the studio.
Cool.
And Hopkins came down a couple of Sunday mornings just to sit in and watch. And then he directed a few scenes in the class, and said, "Nice having me." And
that's cool.
just popped in for a few weeks. Yeah.
I think when this stuff just like lives and breathes inside of you, you like doing that stuff. If you really, if it's part of your blood, you're going to love just being around it at all different levels of it. Whatever that level may be, whether it's popping into a class or doing a feature or doing an indie or making your own project, whatever it might be.
Yeah. I've been doing this for a while now. I can't believe it. And there's been maybe 6 or 7 roles that I was able to really immerse myself in, as an actor. A couple of indie films that I did, and that are on IMDb, and pretty good films. But a lot of times, as we're just facilitators, you do 3 scenes on Law and Order, you're just spitting out exposition,
Right.
You just need to deliver as realistically as you can, but what you're doing is you're there to move the story along. And the writing sometimes is really tough because they have you saying things that are designed to move the story along, not much the character depth, So
yeah.
I look at, I've done Law and Order 8 different times, the three of them, and 2 of them I got to do some great stuff, with Chris North and Annabella Sciorri, and got to do some really good work. And then the other times it's just, you're just spitting out exposition,
I remember auditioning for Law and Orders, and the manager I had at the time, anytime she would call me and say it's for Law and Order, I'd be like, oh, shit. Because you're going to go, you're not going to not go, but you would look at it and you're like Harrison Ford would say about Star Wars is like, you can type this shit, but you can't act it. You can't say it to George Lucas with the Star Wars dialogue. And I used to feel that way with Law and Order. They just stopped calling me in for auditions. So it was, which I was fine with. I was like, hey, I'm good. Don't worry about it. But it's, yeah, it's tough. I think that's always that's one of the hardest challenges. I remember sitting in class and you would sometimes do an audition night. You remember that? You'd set up the video camera, wheel in the TV, because we had a wheel in the TV 15, 16 years ago, whatever it was. And yeah, that heavy ass thing on the huge, like, whatever rack. And, and I remember those, I always say to you that, Harry, these are so invaluable, these classes, because,
you guys like every 6 weeks, remember?
The what?
I would surprise you guys every 6 weeks and leave the material out.
Yep. Yeah. And I liked it. You'd walk in and the scripts would be on the table. Yeah. And you'd be like, oh, it's audition class night, because it was exciting, because I knew I needed that. I hated auditioning. And a lot of times, you'd go into an audition, and I had some decent auditions, but you would go in for an audition and you could easily walk out of there thinking like, man, I suck. I'm the worst actor on the planet. When in fact, you gave an awesome audition. It had nothing to do with you. It had to do with the fact the casting director didn't like you, which believe me, happened to me several times, or they had something else in mind. Or in the case, I had one audition for this short-lived show called Life on Mars, which I think was on for like a season. And I forgot who the casting director was. But it was over in what's that? I don't even know if it's even still there. It's over, I think, in Queens.
Hoffman Astoria?
Might be. It might be.
Oh,
Yeah, maybe. And I remember I auditioned, and they wanted a redheaded bad guy for the arch nemesis of the lead. And I auditioned, and then they were like, "Can you, can you stay and meet the producers at 2?" And this was at like 11. And I was like, yeah, whatever. There's a diner across the way. Let me just go and eat and whatever. And I remember I came back and those casting directors were very professional, which I didn't always run into. And I just remember the producers were talking while I was auditioning. And the casting director stopped it and just said, hey, there's someone up here, because you want them here to fill the need that you have for your show.
yeah.
Yeah, she goes, so please show him some respect. And I was like, holy crap, I love this woman. And then afterwards, she came up to me. She's like, I am so sorry that happened. I said, hey, don't worry about it. It's not a big deal. I still did my thing. And I just used my anger about, how much I wanted to smack them as this character. His character was a serial killer. So it all worked out, at the end of the day. But it's a very, it's a very challenging process. So how did you feel working on a TV series? Because you've worked on a lot of TV series. That was like you were a regular, and that show ran for what, 2 seasons, Homefront?
Yeah, we did 44 episodes.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that was great. It was a big commitment,
Mm-hmm. And it's shot in LA, right?
shot in LA, Warner Brothers Studios,
Mm-hmm.
and stupid me, lived in Venice on the canals, so I had to drive all the way up the floor. It was a hike.
Yeah.
But it was 14-hour days, rewrites, shooting 8 pages a day, 9 pages a day sometimes. And of those 44 episodes, I was the lead in more than half, so I had a lot of stuff to do.
Yeah.
It was great. It was great. Because I always wanted to direct, so I would go and watch the editing, and on my days off, I would go on set and, talk to the director about different shots and different lenses they were choosing. And so I kind of went to film school on Homefront.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But it was good. I love TV. I love film. I struggled early on with sitcom stuff.
Mm-hmm.
My children are very angry with me because after I finished doing a show called Hotel Malibu with Jennifer Lopez, Warner Brothers was doing this show called Friends Like Us.
I know this story. I remember you telling us, but
yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I struggled with sitcom material. I didn't want to be fake. I had this, if you catch me acting, shoot me. And
Right.
Geraldine told me I had this over-dedicated sense to truth.
Mm-hmm.
She said, sometimes you have to act, Harry. Sometimes you just have to let it go. It's okay.
Yeah.
And I got the script, and I was in the waiting room, and what's her name? The blonde from the show.
Kudrow.
She was sitting across from me. And we were waiting for like 2 hours.
Hmm.
And I said, this is a sign from the universe. So I left.
Yeah.
I got a call from Barbara Miller, who was the head of Warner Brothers casting, who cast me in Homefront. She said, did you leave my audition? I said, Barbara, I'm not right for this. She goes, what do you mean you're not right for it?
Mm-hmm.
It's a guy from New York with an edge. And I told all the producers about you. And this is going to be a big hit show, you dummy.
Yeah.
She goes, just have fun. What are you doing? This is a great. She goes, I will see you in my office tomorrow morning. And I hung up.
Okay.
My manager calls me up and she said, what Barbara say? I'd be at her office at 11 o'clock. So I went there and I saw another person from the show and different people and waited for another hour and a half, man.
Mm.
And I had like a panic attack and I left.
Why'd you have the panic? Did you feel like this just isn't right for you?
Just didn't feel it was right for me, you know?
Mm-hmm.
What's his name? The Chandler. What's his name? Got the role.
Yeah. Matthew
Great.
Perry.
Matthew Perry was great in the role. And I watched him periodically over the years. And he's a funny guy.
Mm-hmm.
But Dave, it was my role. You know, because he was an edgy guy from New York.
Yeah.
And like whenever they were like couldn't make up their mind, he goes, "That's enough. Let's go. We're going now."
Yeah.
You know? And his character was more like frenetic, you know, like, okay, enough. We're going now. You know, he was more frenetic. And the role was written as like a really edgy guy, like really edgy, but funny and with a big heart, you know?
Yeah.
And, and I looked at the pilot and I was like, fuck, man, that was mine.
Well, you know,
when I see other people get a role.
Yeah.
I always watch, and I'm very generous. Like, I'll see someone do a role that I auditioned for, and I'm like, damn, that was his, man. He was great. But other times I'm like, nah, that one was mine, you know? But I did break through, and I did get a nice little recurring on the Cosby Show, in the sitcom. So I did a couple episodes of that. So that
was that the Channel 2 show or the one that was on NBC?
Channel 2, yeah.
Okay, when he came back with Felicia Rashad and did
Madeline.
Yeah. Well, it's always tough to say though. You know, shit. It's funny that I went for an audition for True Grit. You know, when they did the remake for the Barry Pepper role that Barry Pepper played. I don't remember the name of the character. And I went in, and this is all going to make sense in a moment. And I had my Southern cowboy accent down. I was, you know, I rode horses. So I seen the guy's on a horse and he gets off the horse, and I had all my shit together, and I go to the restroom, and it's a code, you know, like a key code to get in. So I bend down and I'm like trying to put the code in, and it won't work. And then I go to do it. Suddenly the door flies open. So I'm down like this, and I just look up, and this guy's like, "Oh my God, you know, I'm sorry, you know, whatever." I said, "No, thanks for letting me in." You know, I was about to pee in my pants. So the guy's cracking up, and I look over, and I'm like, "Is that fucking David Schwimmer?" So it was David Schwimmer. So then I went and I peed, and it threw me off because Friends had only been off at that point, I think, for like a year. And I watched that show religiously. And it was that moment where, like, being a fan, letting your ego get controlled screwed me up. I went in for the audition, and the casting directors were not nice at all. I was like, so I'm going to do, you know, this, you know, do you guys have a preference on the accent? I shouldn't have asked, but I was like, my game was off at that point. And they were like, no, we don't want you to do an accent. And I was like, fuck. I was like, these are two things that are throwing me off. And they were eating their lunch, literally like every cliche they could give a crap. I didn't get the part, didn't deserve it. And I'm one of those things. If it's Barry Pepper, then I'm fine losing the role, you know, to him. It would have been nice to be in that movie, but I was okay. You know, you live with it. But things kind of tend to have a tendency of working out the way they're supposed to, even when you feel like they didn't. But, you know, something I think was telling you that just wasn't the fact that you had that panic attack. Maybe you really felt like you weren't going to be living your truth if you did that show.
And also, I think underneath it, subconsciously, I had done Homefront for 2 years. Then I did Hotel Malibu for 9-8 months, and it got canceled. And then And I'm thinking, if this is a hit show, I just wanted to come back to New York, man.
Mm-hmm.
I had my older daughter, we had Brianna, and Allison and I were talking about starting our family in New York. And if I had gotten it, we would have been back out. So subconsciously, I think that's what it was really about.
Yeah.
Do I want to live in LA or not?
Mm-hmm.
I just didn't. I didn't respond to LA well. When I was working, it was great.
Yeah.
But, at that time I had two kids, and then I did a pilot a few months after that. I was up in Vancouver. Then I did another pilot that didn't get picked up, um, and then when I moved back to New York, I started the studio, the Actors Alliance.
Mm-hmm.
Which I wanted actors to have a place to come where they felt like people had their back.
Yeah.
And every person who was a member of my studio. Now, my scene study was a private thing. We were all, but there was also the workshops we did, and where Vinny Piazza would come, and Mark Menchaca. He was on Ozark. Remember Mark from the studio?
Who did he play on Ozark?
He was in the first season. He played the uncle, the crazy uncle with twins.
Oh shit, Ruth's.
Yeah, that was
Damn
Mark.
it! I thought he looked familiar when I saw him shaved because I looked him up after I saw the first season.
Yeah, and
Wow.
in the studio, we're in there, and I just wanted actors to have a place to come where they feel like people have their back.
Mm-hmm.
There's one thing we know about actors: most of the time, when we're trying to get to where we want to go, it's good to know that someone has your back.
Yeah, it's true.
I tried to do that because when I was a young actor, I had a few people come in my path. They were angels. They didn't have to have my back, and they did for
Mm-hmm.
no reason. Because I was a fucking snarly Brooklyn psychopath
Mm-hmm.
who was pretty talented.
Yeah,
But
you were good with 50, right? You said 50 bar fights. You didn't lose any.
probably more. But you know, I played Stanley Kowalski in college. And that was a great experience.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, I always said when my youngest daughter finishes college, I was gonna kind of go back after it again. So she's got one more year, and I have a few little directing projects lined up, and a couple little acting projects lined up, and back in this class on Monday nights. And
Mm-hmm.
so the universe is starting to speak to me, where, hopefully when she's done with school, I would love to do another TV series. I
Yeah.
have a few pounds I need to lose and get my ass back in shape, and go back after it.
Yeah.
Act two.
Well, yeah, man. I mean, that's the thing that's nice nowadays is that there's so many options to be in things, with all the streaming platforms, all the shows that are out. It's not just the network anymore, where there's a limited amount of things that are happening. And you have indie films that are being more and more recognized, and those directors being seen, actors in those projects getting opportunities. So it's a very different world. I mean, the whole digital age was like, it was a revolution. We used to call it the digital revolution, when I had my film company, and it was just like, this is a time where the playing field gets leveled a little bit. So it's totally doable. So I wanted to ask you a little bit about directing. I know you had your first film, which was Crooked Lines, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you had a couple of folks in that, that you've kept in touch with.
A lot of fun.
Yeah. And so what is it about directing that you enjoy?
Um, when I was a kid, I told you I wanted to act. I never told anyone. So I would watch them rehearse the school plays in high school. And I remember thinking, well, why is he saying it like that? Why isn't he more, you know, I didn't know the words to say, this kid needs a clearer objective here. You know,
Mm-hmm.
why is the director having them do this? He's got to keep the conflict going here. They're resolving the conflict too soon. I wasn't saying those words, but I had all these thoughts like, no, they would never make up that way in real
Yeah,
life.
yeah.
They fucking hate each other right now.
Mm-hmm.
And so I always had this over dedicated sense to truth, and my dad was a homicide detective, as you know, and
Mm-hmm.
so I got this kind of sense of logic and reasoning from him. And my dad had an over dedicated, like a commercial would come on and my dad would say, see this, guys, is advertising, this is all bullshit. When he was 7
Yeah.
years old, he was telling us, look, most things that go on around us in society and on TV, it's bullshit.
Yeah.
So I was kind of trained to have a good bullshit meter at a young age,
Mm-hmm.
and I think to be able to work as a team with a group of people, and look, we worked in class, right? I directed your scenes in class, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, I like to get in there and be specific with actors, but at the same time, let them find what they need to find. Now with you, because you're such a natural, organic actor, I only had to say 2 or 3 little things to you, and you would bring your own stuff to it. Some people you have to, you know, you really have to spoon feed them, and then
Yeah.
yeah, other people. So I always found it was a challenge to being drilled by Geraldine all the time about getting down in the circumstances, being specific about what the relationships are, what's at stake, what are your characters' wants, needs, and desires.
Mm-hmm.
So passionate about all that stuff that being directed by her in class for a year and a half every week, it just kind of made me want to work with other actors that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
I found it. It's
teach someday.
what was that?
Geraldine said to me, "You need to teach someday."
Mm.
2 weeks before she died. Yeah,
Oh, really? Mm. When did she pass away?
87.
Oh, wow. A long time. Yeah, it's interesting. I think like directing's a different animal. I've said this before to people, but you told me you should direct. And I had other teachers tell me I should direct, and I was always insulted because I was a young, stupid, egocentric actor thinking,
Did I say that to you? I don't remember.
yeah, you said to me, I'd love to see you direct one day. And I was like, Harry, I'm an actor. I want to have things to show on the screen, man. Why are you trying to push me behind the camera? And then it just kept on popping up over and over and over and over again. And then I finally just said, out of necessity, all right, I'm gonna do this. And I found this love that I never even knew I had for it, and clarity. I know the first thing we did where I was solely on my own directing, because first time I directed, I co-directed. Um, I remember just sitting there thinking like, all these people are going to realize at some point, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. It's like, I can only bullshit through this so much. And then, but then I looked at the finished results and I'm like, wow, that came together. That's pretty good. And then as each thing, always room for improvement. But then I just started to realize how much I loved it, and how you get to, I would do a similar thing. I would sit and look at people in class and I would say, what did I believe that they did and what don't I believe? And then I would wait to listen to you or another teacher that I respected in the years earlier. And I would say, what's Harry saying? Is Harry picking up on the same stuff I am or not? And now I was doing it with the thought, well, this will just make me a better actor. I'll know what the director wants before he has to say it. But as time went on, I realized that was actually just fine tuning my ability to, the bullshit detector. What's about the teacher I mentioned before, Lawrence? He said to me back in like '99, "Who's your favorite actor?" I said Harrison Ford, and he was like, "Oh, why?" And I said, "Because I like him. I mean, he's Harrison Ford. Like, what's not to like?" And he's like, "Plenty, David, plenty." He's like, "What?" He said, "I think." I was like, "Well, because he's realistic." And he was like, "Yes, but he's not always entertaining." And I thought that was interesting. I said, "What do you mean by that?" And he goes, "You always have to have entertaining realism. Like, it's important that it's realistic, but it's also important that it's entertaining and that there's things you're trying to accomplish in a scene and get from A to B and the challenges and all the struggles and all that stuff." So it was, I thought it was very, very intriguing. But directing is it's a different animal, but I think it's a great one.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so what do you got coming up next?
I'm directing a short film in November, and we raised a bunch of money for this film. And if all goes well, we'll shoot it in springtime.
Oh, good. Is that the one you were mentioning a couple of weeks back?
Yeah, it's a good film. We have some good people attached, but um, we're waiting on a few things to fall in place.
Mm-hmm.
And there.
Yeah. It's always the way, you got things happening and then you got to wait and then there's a delay and then there's a problem and then there's a resolution and then there's a new problem. So it's the most complicated business, and half the time it doesn't seem like it needs to be, but it is anyway.
Very true.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you for coming on. We've been chatting for like an hour or so, and if I do this for another season, I'd love to have you on again, do a part 2, check in and see where things are at with you at that point. So, awesome, man. Thanks for coming on. I will chat with you.